Now, Giovanna is an assistant professor, so I'm rather loath to use the word young academies, but these have been very, very fruitful throughout Europe and on the SAM unit, giving advice and providing energy to that group. Giovanna is going to speak about science policy and diplomacy and how those two work together. So, Giovanna, would you like to start, please?
Well, thank you so much for this kind introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation. It is a great pleasure to take part in this webinar and the initiative, and to meet you all on the occasion. I will share with you an overview from the perspective that complements the discussion on the interactions and cooperations with different stakeholders and the academies, and complements this with the perspective of the early career researchers. So I hope that you will be able to see some of my slides that will aid this overview.
That's fine, Giovanna.
Thank you. Now, it is further my pleasure to share with you some insights from the perspective of the Swiss Young Network for Science Policy and Diplomacy, abbreviated as SYNESPOD, which is part of the Swiss Young Academy, as a young division of the Swiss Academy of Arts and the Swiss Academy in general. Now, this initiative has been brought together in 2022 with the effort of a number of our members of the Swiss Young Academy, some of whom I highlight here as they continue to be members of the active team of the SYNESPOD, that bring together perspectives of early career researchers from different disciplines of natural, social sciences, and engineering in the context of the interface of science and policy, and who are brought together with a shared vision to provide a platform for early career researchers to contribute to this particular space. Now, more generally, we were motivated by a number of ongoing and pressing societal challenges that affect us beyond national borders, from the climate emergency, biodiversity loss, a number of health and geopolitical crises that increasingly require interactions at the interface of science, policy, and diplomacy across disciplines. So in addition to this, we were further motivated by our experience with one of the previous projects of the Swiss Young Academy, entitled Who Gets Heard, that explored the process of selecting scientific experts within the Swiss legislative process, and that further emphasized the interest in engaging early career researchers and building their capacity in this context. Now, building on this background and our motivations, this was not translated into the SYNESPOD platform that aims to now provide such a network and platform for science for policy and diplomacy through partnerships with both national and international institutions, in order to now contribute to the engagement of the early career researchers by increasing their capacity, impact, and visibility within Switzerland, but also beyond, particularly being mindful of addressing some of these pressing societal challenges towards sustainable development. Now, this has been realized through a number of activities that can be summarized in two groups of activities, including those on science for policy and science diplomacy. In terms of science for policy, we've been focused on capacity building by developing a number of trainings and workshops with a number of partners, including other international academies, but also institutions in Switzerland that I will detail in more precisely in the continuation of my overview. But also science diplomacy that now includes some of these international cooperations to contribute further to this space and address the questions that go beyond the Swiss system when it comes to the science for policy, including European perspectives and more international ones, through collaborations with other young academies, but also international Geneva, as I will provide more detail on shortly. Now, I will now provide you with some of the examples of some of these initiatives, which has been the main objective and the purpose of my contribution through this webinar. Now, when it comes to science for policy, we have over the past year organized two groups of trainings in German and French with our collaborators at REACH, which is a Swiss think tank that operates at the interface of science and policy, particularly in Switzerland, and with whom, through their Francini Bootcamp program, we have co-organized workshops, as I mentioned, in both German and French that reflects the complexity of the Swiss political system to provide insights to particularly early career researchers about the political system and facilitate their understanding and engagement in the process. Now, we have received excellent feedback and encouragement to proceed with some of these initiatives, which now stimulates the organization of follow-up workshops, such as in collaboration with the Geneva Science Policy Interface, or GSPI, where we will be organizing a workshop this year in English that also complements some of these efforts with international perspectives in Europe and beyond. We have also been, through these activities, engaged not just broadly providing or taking the efforts to provide workshops and offer these capacity building initiatives more broadly, but also more disciplinarily, such as by engaging with the World Biodiversity Forum, where my colleague Clara Zemp will be leading a session on conservation science policy and diplomacy. Now, we continue to collaborate on these initiatives with the Swiss Academy at large, and we aim to continuously contribute to a number of related initiatives. So some of these reach more internationally, and some of the illustrations that I would like to highlight on the occasion are our contributions and active collaborations with the European Network of Young Academies through the participation of one of the meetings last year in Stockholm and the upcoming meeting in Berlin, and we will be fortunate and pleased to host the next ENYA meeting in 2025 in Bern. We have also collaborated with some of the partners at the International Geneva that are worth mentioning on this occasion, which involves another think tank, Foraus, but also the Geneva Science Diplomacy Anticipator, or GESDA, supported by the Swiss federal government, and who are organizing a number of initiatives on science diplomacy, bringing together different stakeholders contributing to this space. So teaming up with Foraus and GESDA, we managed to organize a number of initiatives and contribute to their Geneva Science Diplomacy Week that now takes place every year, by contributing to sessions such as the one organized in collaboration with the Interparliamentary Union at CERN, contributing to the discussion on the relationships between science and parliaments, and also interactive sessions that relate to these topics, such as by bringing early career researchers and other stakeholders to discuss the role of science diplomacy and anticipatory science diplomacy in the context of emerging technologies. Now, some of the impressions from these meetings are captured in these illustrations that also bring together a number of early career researchers with other stakeholders and active that are active within this area, which we aim to continue to nurture through a number of ongoing initiatives, most of which are also captured in some of the partnerships that are highlighted here, as we aim to foster these continuous exchanges with some of the partners that has been captured in a number of our joint events and continuous discussions, one of which I highlight here, that involve bringing some of these collaborators, such as from the International Geneva Science Policy Interface, Foraus, REACH, the former president of YASAS as member of SAPEA, but also members of young academies, such as the Swedish Young Academy and the Global Young Academy, with whom we continuously collaborate through active support of these initiatives, and where we have been meeting and engaging in these initiatives with the objective to share experiences, address challenges, but also create more opportunities for early career researchers to contribute at the interface of science, policy, and diplomacy. Now, most of these are captured through a variety of reports where we actively share these ideas, information about the exchanges, as well as opportunities through our website. And finally, this creates a momentum for us to continue these activities through some of the initiatives that I've already highlighted and that I emphasize in a brief summary, where we will continue to organize the workshops, such as the one in English this year with the GSPI. We will continue to contribute to the Geneva Science Diplomacy Week, through a number of initiatives discussing the role of science diplomacy within this space, as well as other thematic conferences, such as those on the World Biodiversity Forum, while at the same time actively working together with other academies, such as the Global Young Academy and other national young academies, working on the process of sharing knowledge and gathering information by mapping, for example, the science policy interface for different educational offers that will provide more opportunity in Switzerland, Europe, as well as more internationally for other early career researchers to engage within that space. With that mindset, I hope that this stimulates further discussion on this occasion, while I would like to thank you all for your kind attention, and I look forward to the continuation of our discussion. Thank you. I believe that there might not be sound, excuse me.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. It seems that the young academies have really taken off now in a very big way, and they're not acting in isolation. And your group, Sinestod, I think it was called, you have how many members altogether now? Just to give us an idea of size.
So the Swiss Young Academy is relatively young. We are only really entering some of the first cohorts of members. So we are only around 30 members of the Young Academy because it has been established in 2019. However, we continue with these activities that bring on not only the members of the Young Academy, but other early career researchers or academics across Switzerland that then contribute to a variety of events, and where they're invited to contribute to many of these initiatives that are primarily organized by the Academy members.
Fine, thank you. And do you have any age limits, or how do you enroll, or is there anything formal in that respect?
So there are different approaches to defining young academics across different young academies. And this does not necessarily involve age, which is typically, with respect to age, anywhere between 35 to 40 years of age, while it often refers to academic age in terms of number of years after a PhD, which is typically around 5 to 10 years after the PhD, and which primarily involves, in the case of young academies, early to mid-career academics contributing to these activities.
Well, congratulations for getting where you are. I think I hope you'll find that the other white-haired participants today are young at heart. Anyway,
it's difficult. I completely agree. Defining age here is a delicate matter, but in general, I appreciate the engagement, as this really facilitates the process of bringing many different stakeholders together and also engaging the young academics very early to build these relationships.
Thank you very much indeed, Giovanna. Of course, you'll be taking part in the discussion later on. Now,
thank you very much. My pleasure.
Morten?
Yes.
Good. Morten, I'm sorry you are having trouble connecting, but I'm delighted that you're here. Morten is going to be the next speaker. Morten is a really fantastic example of how academe links across to industry. And he is from Denmark. He leads work on carbon capture and storage. He's a board member of the Danish mission-driven public-private partnership in carbon capture. So is a real example of how an academic can move into real policy and into real contribution to society. And he's going to address today the topic of a private-public partnership, particularly in terms of carbon capture and the ATV's Carbon Mission Lab. So, Morten, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind words. I think you have a slide of mine which you need to share to the audience. So please share that. And then let me start by saying that I'm really happy to have the opportunity to address this and also to discuss the very good qualities of the collaboration that is established here in Denmark by the Danish Academy of Technical Sciences. And I will bring to you the perspective, as just was said, from the industry. So normally for Total Energies, where I'm working, we of course are very engaged in the local societies all over the globe. Nevertheless, sometimes it can be hard to actually reach out in the full wide scope of various stakeholders in a specific society. And also from a technological point of view, we appreciate from the industry to actually be in dialogue with all relevant players in the society. And if so, when I have been engaged with HEV for the last couple of years in not only the Carbon 110% lab, which I'm going to discuss in a minute, but also in some of the panel discussions that have been at the annual events, I think that what springs to mind is that first of all, technology is quite broad. There are many different technologies to bring to the table. It's all from digital to healthcare to climate science. And because it's so wide, it's also very, very complex and multidisciplinary efforts that's needed to solve the issues that the modern society is facing. And I believe that is a very important role for the academies, because they can, in a different manner, actually as a neutral party, actually bring industry and academia together and engage in collaboration. And it's not only industry and academia, it's also, as here in the lab, which I'll get back to, is you will also have regulatory bodies that would participate in this. And I think the most, you could argue, more courageous efforts are also to bring in the social sciences, because many of the challenges that we see today that we are looking for technological solutions, they also impact the general population, and therefore public acceptance, public perception is very, very important. And therefore we need also to be in a close dialogue with the social sciences in order to be able, in order to ensure that we are successful. And a prime example to my knowledge of this is the Carbon 110% Mission Lab, as I'm going to discuss now. So you may be aware of that the Danish government has put out some very ambitious climate goals, which means that we need to reduce our CO2 emissions with 110% by 2050. And clearly, that is quite a task. And you could argue both academia, regulatory bodies, and industry are now trying to follow up on that ambition and deliver for the next 20 years and a little more than that. But it's very complex, and that's why I think it's very good that HEV has put out this ambition of the mission labs. And the way it was constructed, and we are actually today participating in the last of 4 workshops that has been conducted in the last 10 months, where the idea is to bring together people from, as I said, academia, industry, NGOs, regulatory bodies in one single room under the Chatham House, and which means that we are speaking openly, freely, and there is the limitation of that you may be able to quote of statements when you get out of the room, but you cannot really tell who was actually the source, which means that you also hear that both industry and also regulatory bodies are a little more willing to share, also concerns about, yes, we are implementing this, but we understand that there is this risk. What can we do about it? That's the kind of conversation that we normally do not have. And the reason why that is essential now is that we are looking for changing the agriculture, the farming in Denmark. We are looking after, we want more biodiversity. We want to reduce our emissions by not only by capturing the CO2 from point sources. We may want to consider direct air capture. We may want to consider that we convert some of the store some of the carbon in biochar on our fields. We want to do electrify our society. All these initiatives, we are working on those, but we have a tendency to work on those in silos. So we all are progressing on these, but we don't necessarily always think about the interdependencies. So, for example, if we were to reduce our emissions by direct air capture, everybody knows that's quite energy intensive. But even in 2040, it may be quite energy intensive. But we would have an urge to get that energy from green energy, meaning wind power. And that's a perfect good rationale for actually doing that. However, if we do that, we actually take quite a big chunk of the green power we have available for the total Danish society. So by using the power for DAC, for direct air capture, we cannot use it for something else. And those kind of dilemmas, we really need to be much better at understanding before we are walking down the pathways. And that's what we're discussing. And we started out in August trying to frame what would a perfect world look like in 2050 based on all these inputs that we had from all the different stakeholders I told you about. And then we have progressively worked our way, okay, so this is the perfect world. So how do we get there? What are the interdependencies? What are the first stepping stones that we need to take? And what are the difficulties in that? And that's what I think is the aim for the deliverable for the lab is, you can argue, that you somehow get a report that can tell a multidisciplinary story about where the solutions make sense, what are the trade-offs, and where can we easily go forward. And I think it's too ambitious to say we can solve these things, but I think the report from the Academy will then actually point to new areas where we need to have new research, new technological developments in order to make sure that when we take decisions on our future energy system and how we're going to reduce emissions from the agriculture, we understand what are the trade-offs. So that is really very, very brave, I believe, and I really hope we're going to be successful at the end of the day. And there's one element which keeps popping up, which I would like to end my small talk about here, is the public acceptance and perception. Because no matter whether you're talking about more solar panels on the fields in Denmark, whether you're talking about CO2 storage on land, power to X e-fuels, they will all take a toll on the private sector and the public people's you could say gardens, the forests, things like that. And there's also a limited budget that we can spend, because at some point the people will be worried about this. They will complain about this, and that can be just a hard challenge to overcome, like any technological challenge will be. And therefore we need to embrace that as well. And therefore I really appreciate the initiative. And we spent, as I said, these 4 workshops, they are all 4 to 5 hours. We have 30 people in the room every time on this, and we are discussing it from all angles to make sure that we are covering all ground for how we can reduce our emissions in Denmark with 110% in 2050. Of course, we're looking forward to the final deliverables that will be concluded today, and then the ATV will write up a report on this. But I think this is quite essential for all the complex problems that we or we need to solve in the society, is that we need to get together, all stakeholders, speak much more openly, create a trusted environment, which the ATV has created here, where opinions can be shared and solutions can be found for the greater common good at the end.
Morten, thank you very much indeed. That was, well, I'd use the word visionary, actually, because just to pick up one of the things you mentioned, which was we've been working in silos, and that's absolutely right. And, we have to remember that. And you mentioned agriculture, you've mentioned energy, you've mentioned carbon, all now highly specialized in different ways. And you can see why silos have emerged. But at the same time, we now must realize that they're all interdependent. And one last thing, which I think was very relevant, you mentioned regulators. Now, we have to appreciate that regulators are often not experts in much, and politicians particularly. We have in England politicians who have degrees in classics. Well, the language that we all speak is different. And we have to appreciate that. They are experts in their own field, but at the same time, they have political power and the regulators have regulatory power. So whilst we mustn't be condescending, we have to be very positive and appreciate that we all have different skills. And I think it's wonderful to hear from the top of industry, and particularly in Denmark, which I know is very keen in these areas, you speaking in the way you have done. So we look forward to more discussion of that later on in the major discussion. So thank you, Morten. And I'm very sorry you had a problem connecting. But
no worries. I think it was in our end, so don't worry about that.
You're with us now. Well, we move on now to Rachel Quinn. Rachel, I know very well from being a member of the Academy of Medical Sciences in England. And Rachel and I have worked together for several years. Rachel is the head of policy at the Academy of Medical Sciences. She has great credentials to do that. She started off with a degree in applied biology, and then to a PhD in ecology. All of those things cross many, many boundaries, as I was just addressing with Morten. Rachel moved on to the Royal Society as her first sort of management administrative role in science. The oldest society in the UK, and then moved to the youngest society in the UK, the Academy of Medical Sciences. So, Rachel, I now hand over to you to talk about how you've influenced policy and the relationship between academy and policy. Over to you.
Thanks very much, George, and thanks, Ruben, for controlling my slides. So yeah, I'm Director of Medical Science Policy at the Academy of Medical Sciences, and I've been there for about 14 years and seen the importance of stakeholder collaboration grow, which has been really exciting. Can I have the next slide, please, Ruben? So I'm just putting this slide up. This is our current strategy, and our vision is good health for all, supported by the best research and evidence. And the reason I put this slide up is because I want to draw your attention to our values, where one of our values is actually about collaborating widely. So it's really integrated into everything we do. Can I have the next slide, please? And these are our strengths as we've set out in the strategy. And like all other academies, we have fellows, elected fellows, who are at the heart of all we do, like George on the call, and are key to our credibility. Most are academics in our academy. Half are clinically trained, which means they've got a medical degree or a nursing degree, for example. Many of them work in the National Health Service generally. And about half of them are what we call non-clinical, which isn't the best way to define people, but essentially discovery scientists, medical ethicists, lawyers, behavioral scientists, etc. We have a growing number of fellows who do research in industry, but mainly large pharmaceutical industry, but still a really small part of our fellowship. So to get that understanding of the range of perspectives in life sciences and health, we need to go outside. We also fund and provide career support for our emerging research leaders and involve them in our work. Ivana was just demonstrating how important it is to involve emerging research leaders, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But you'll see that 4 of our 7 strengths relate to collaboration and partnership. I think as I said, it's essential to get the range of perspectives if you are trying to support evidence-based decision making. primarily in government, which is one of our major priorities. And I was just going to give an example sort of for life sciences. If you think about the development of the COVID vaccine in the UK, that brought together National Health Service, industry, regulators and academics, really working together quickly and effectively. And that really drew on the previous years of partnerships between those groups. Next slide, please. So I was going to talk about our forum. The Academy was founded in 1998, so it's actually quite young, 25 years last year, had virtually no money and staff. George will probably remember this. But the recognition of the importance of the stakeholder grouping within life sciences and health meant that 5 years later, we prioritized forming the forum. It's a network of organizations who pay very generously a contribution to the Academy as well. They're consulted on the programs that we do, and also they are a great way for us of taking the temperature of the stakeholder network involved in health. And so when we're talking to government, we're able to draw on the expertise of all the stakeholders that we talk to through this network. I've put the membership breakdown there, so quite a lot of academic organizations, which you'd expect, but more industry, large pharma, but also med tech and and biotech. But we might talk about that, some of those challenges of engaging those parts of industry later. The life sciences networks tend to be geographical, and then we've got regulators and lots of charities involved as well, medical research charities, as I'm sure they are across the rest of Europe, very active in the UK, and like industry, providing a large amount of money into research and innovation. So it's an events program. It basically is about tackling significant health challenges through cross-sector collaboration. And I think the key thing is we provide a neutral and independent platform. So, for example, if regulators want to come and talk to industry about what are the new areas of where is drug development going and what kind of regulatory landscape do we need, they can do that in a way that they can't in their one-to-one meetings, just as an example. And I'd just like to draw your attention before we move on to that top right quote from one of our patient participants at our forum workshop about clinical trials. I'll be talking about that later. That's really important to us. Can I have the next slide, please? So obviously no point in bringing everyone together if it doesn't have an impact. So the impact of these sort of multi-stakeholder network that we have, and I should stress that you don't have to be a paid up member of the network to come in. Each of our workshops, we make sure that we have the right people in the room. And like I said, patients are becoming an increasingly important stakeholder group. So we know from the sort of evaluation we do afterwards that at these events, cross-sector connections are made and sustained. We know that people are getting a better understanding of the opportunities and barriers in different sectors, so building a mutual understanding. And just pulling 3 of our recent workshops, our workshop that we did on antimicrobial resistant research, where we looked at learning lessons from COVID-19 pandemic, like wastewater sampling, is informing the development of the UK government's AMR strategy. The clinical trials for rare and ultra rare diseases is actually cited in the English Rare Diseases Action Plan, where there's a commitment to look at the recommendations from that workshop, which had, as I said, patient voices there. And they're looking at taking those forward. And then we did a really exciting meeting around enabling greener biomedical research. And that's really provided a sort of landscape review for a number of different organizations, but particularly UK research funders. Just an idea of some of the other topics that we're doing this year. So we've done one recently on early detection of neurodegenerative diseases, and we partnered with medical research charities on that because they bring a very important perspective and also an important patient and supporter group. We've got a lecture, which I'm just going to highlight because it's a hybrid. Anyone can come, health research where you are, from GPs to care homes. And I think that's putting a spotlight on areas where research isn't as good. It's very good in hospitals, but less so in some of those other settings. And with an aging population, that's really important. And then one on health monitoring, and then one more generally on this stakeholder interface. Next slide, please. Just wanted to talk about the other work we do on cross-sector, just to highlight how important it is for us to bring these sectors together. Our flyer scheme it basically recognizes that future leaders, you know, heads of research councils, heads of universities, heads of the NHS or parts of the NHS really need to understand all the different sectors. So that's bringing together people from sort of mid-career, sort of hothousing them for a year, and there's been some amazing outcomes of that, where people are working together for tech transfer, where people have decided that actually industry isn't evil and they'll go into industry. They actually think they can see the value of industry, so that's really good. And then some more recent things, we've got cross-sector hubs. Our first one's in Wales, but we're setting them up in Scotland and Northern Ireland, which really again brings together all of those stakeholders with a particular focus on enabling early career researchers and emerging research leaders to engage with these people. And then our cross-sector experience awards, which is just our first round, is just closed, and that was a recognition, some work we'd done in policy with input from our forum network, that really, if you really want to understand how another organization works, you need to go and work there. And there's lots of reasons why that doesn't tend to work. There's problems with contracts, there's problems with reward and recognition. So this is just a chance for people to take time out, and we've had some really exciting applications for people wanting to go from the health service into industry, from academia into the health service, and then into charities as well. So we're really excited about that. Next slide, please. Final slide. So this really is a sort of newer relationship with patients and carers. We've obviously always understood that it's important to engage with patients and carers, but it's only in recent years that we're really doing this in a concerted way. We recognize that patients and carers obviously bring a unique and valuable perspective about challenges, opportunities, and priorities in life sciences and health, where they're involved in our more mainstream work as well. It's very valuable for policymakers to see what essentially voters are thinking, and also to understand if you're trying to develop an area of policy where you need to implement something, obviously you need to know that everybody's on board, and patients and carers are one of those really important areas. So, like I said, they remind everyone of the purpose of research and innovation. Some of them are actually patient researchers as well, and we're looking at how we can support them better. So there'll be co-PIs on research projects. And now patients are participants, speakers, and steering group members in the forum workshops that I mentioned, and also in our other influencing activities. And to really put our money where our mouth is, we've also got two patients are co-opted members of the Academies governing body, the Academies Council, in some ways to kind of hold us to account and also point out where we're not really considering the wider implications of some of our work. That is a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Thank you very much, Ruben, for my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Rachel, one question just flashed across the screen about is it just human medicine or presumably veterinary medicine as well?
So do you want to, well, so the Academy, the Academy includes fellows with expertise in veterinary medicine. It's a very good question about the forum. Definitely not excluding veterinary medicine. We don't have any members from that space at the moment, but yeah, definitely would be interested in looking at that. And I know FIAM's forum is kindly loosely based on ours, and I don't know how FIAM is handling veterinary medicine, because I know FIAM has a lot of veterinary academies as members. So
yes,
not sure from a pan-European point of view whether veterinary medicine is included as well.
Yes, well, indeed, One Health is now a big
for us as well, yeah.
And the relationship between animals and humans at many levels, from agriculture through to zoonotic infections. And FIAM has a One Health committee which tries to broaden this this approach. But like the Academy of Medical Sciences, we feel that involvement of patients is a very important extrapolate. How we get through to politicians is another question that I think we can discuss later on. Thank you very much, Rachel. We'll come on to discussion in the group at the end, of course. Thank you. Now we move on to the last invited speaker, and this is Norbert Babchan from the Hungarian Academy of Engineering, and he's going to talk about a cross-sectional engagement, how the Hungarian material industry and technology platform is linked through to the Hungarian Academy of Engineering. Norbert, if you'd like to take over, please. Hello.
Thank you, George. I'm very glad to be here and present our view of engineering science and how the Hungarian Academy of Engineering can contribute to the development of the industrialization and the development of the humankind. So we are speaking about technologies in this scene, and technologies and the Hungarian Academy of Engineering is a bridge between science and industry. The Hungarian Academy of Engineering is acting as a catalyzer. It's catalyzing innovation, but it's not a very old academy. Is only 1990 was established, and the mission is address social, environment, economic, technical challenges in Hungary, and ensure the well-being of Hungarian citizens. But we think that the academy is source of the highest level knowledge. So it's a knowledge-based source. And this knowledge, I would like to announce and make a little bit of advertisement for the next annual conference of EURACASE, which will be held in Budapest this year. The topic is engineering sustainability and new solution for environmental, urban, and health system. So how this multidisciplinary approach going on the table, and everything is related with personalities. I would like to tell a little bit about myself. I'm an engineer physicist, where the two disciplines are bonded together as a cantor, and I just would like to mention two interesting topics, which is cross-sectional and interdisciplinary, which was engaged with my management on nanomedicine, nanomedical drug, generic drug development, which was a collaboration between University Research Institute and company. And the result was doxyl liposome, and which is related later on with a COVID vaccine made by Katalin Karikó. Industry needs technologies, and we should consider multidisciplinary approach, not only between different disciplines as materials and energies, and don't forget to have the circular economy when certain materials can act as energy source, like aluminum, but also carbon. Carbon can be a material as well. And to make technologies, we have to consider TRL to TRL9, and I had the possibility to make a factory from an innovation. And we are a little bit, as engineers, bonded to projects. So we are thinking on projects. And beside that, the knowledge is very important, and this is the basic source. I'm often called that knowledge gaining is a minus TRL level. So until we have an idea what can be technologized, We have to gain knowledge and grow knowledge, and this is a science. And in engineering, stakeholders are on the example of a bridge making. There are authorities, environmental advocacy groups, local residents, investors, so the publics and the money is involved. So, but when we want to make technologies, we have different steps on the technological readiness, and not only those actors who are who can do development of technologies, but also who are selling the result of the technologies and who are investing. So these are different stakeholders as well on the field of industrialization. Engineering roles, and I'm speaking about all this topic, platform of the Hungarian materials industry technology platform. We are sensitive also on engineering policy and diplomacy, and we are sensitive because we feel a responsibility, and we want to be ethical, and we have to make a sustainable future as well. So in order to do that, we have to work with engineers with policy and diplomacy, and this reflects to different disciplines as social sciences, laws, and those things which has to be involved. So the Hungarian Material Industry Technology Platform aims to establish a high value added material industry and material security in Hungary, hoping to collaborate with European countries on that topic, on different platforms from Europe and the world. And we supporting the national industrial strategy with knowledge-based representatives. So if we speak about the cross-sectional engagement of that platform, as the platform is a section of the Hungarian Academy of Engineering, it has a very strong bond to the persons who are involved in the academy, but also connected with the Hungarian Science Academy through individuals, and moreover to the Hungarian Chamber of Engineers and some individuals from the public. So we call this is a vertical organization structure. These are people who has competencies. And there are horizontal organizations which the platform is also linked, which is the Hungarian Association for Innovation, where the members are companies, NGOs, universities, and research institutes. The Hungarian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where the members are companies, so they have different interests. Our customer, sometimes the Hungarian governmental organizations, who need strategic knowledge, and these organizations are regulators who are not experts, and especially for that they need a feedback. And we have very honored partners in Europe and international, Eurocase and CATS, through the Hungarian Academy of Engineering. And there are starting to have some platform on those organizations as well. So how we organize our activities, we organize workshops and studies on new technologies, industrialization, and industrial strategies. And we also have a connection to SAPEL, for example, which feels responsible for teaching the academies for communications. And we also learned that to bring together these stakeholders and to transfer knowledge or result of discussion, we have to use different communications channels and different communication languages. So summarizingly, I can say that this is a kind of keiretsu ecosystem when peoples and organizations are connected. And we have already organized very interesting topics on how to use coal, for example, as a material, and how to introduce Hungary the new material types like composites into the industry. So finally, my main takeaway is that beside the collaboration sectors, we have collaboration steps, which can be the technological readiness levels, but also other steps when we establish and the connection and communicate. Of course, if we have a strong texture of our society, I mean a good ecosystem, we have a better chance to communicate. But we have an important role to establish discussion among people and among organizations, and the best role for that is a platform. Horizontal and vertical organization structure is a good form of grouping different stakeholders on the scientific and industrial fields. And summarizingly, this new approach between academia and industry, strategy, partnership, and technological decision-making may be a good possibility for organizing stakeholder communication and helping government organization in the strategic meeting, strategy definition. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Norbert. Several words struck me as being crucial in your talk. Sustainability, responsibility, new technologies, and a platform for communication. All of those being absolutely crucial. And crucial link with industry. One of the, and I'm sure that Norbert will be very interested in this, because one of the major sources of CO2 from the building industry, of course, is the production of cement, and how we can reduce that, let alone trap it, is a really important thing. And when you look around our cities now and the immense amount of concrete that we see in building structures, in bridges, the CO2 load from that must be very big. So it's very good that there is an academic body and a link between industry looking at things like this. And I'd be very interested to hear how you two link in the future, actually, because obviously you're talking a very similar language.
Yes, you know, to know technologies is also a knowledge, but technology needs to be developed, so needs to be created. It's you can copy nature, and you can find some technologies, what nature is doing, but usually we have to be creative to make new technologies. but you say your examples, like in case of cement, we have to take away the carbon, so to use other heat resource, as it was successfully made in aluminum. So it's very amazing that the aluminum industry, what is doing now. So took away all of the CO2 resources, so direct CO2 resources. So we have technologies now in this moment. Of course, you can use other material. But my main message would be for your question that we have to consider together in the circular economy, materials and energy. And this is, I call, infinite circular economy. And you can change one path to another energy resource, but it's more complex. So we have to think. So we have to think that how we combine different fields and what type of materials and what type of energy you replace in the circularity. But finally, we will have a network economy when a lot of things, not only materials and energy connected, but information and those things, and you change one thing to another. So it's more than circular economy, but we have to think about that, and we need the knowledge to establish a great future.
Yes. And then the last thing you said, which I thought was very important, and it reflects what you've just been saying, that is a platform for communication, so that there's communication across the user, the producer, the materials producers, and so on, so we all understand each other. And, you know, in climate change, that Morten, of course, is very interested in, the influence of that on health, we are just beginning to see. Mosquitoes are able, which can spread important viral diseases, let alone malaria, are now beginning to be commonly isolated in Europe. And this is a 2 degrees centigrade rise in temperature. That's all. So all of these things are interrelated, and we must have a platform for communication. Now, thank you to all 4 speakers for giving excellent talks and showing how these platforms do exist, and involvement of different groups, both community and patients in health, and through to regulators. And now we're going to go into a roundtable discussion with with all of the speakers, and they've been asked to submit some questions which they regard as important in their own area. And I'm going to ask them to address the questions that they've brought up, and then invite all of the speakers to comment on that, because what you'll see is all of the questions are common between all the elements that we've been discussing, from health to building structures to trapping CO2 to involvement of academies with policymakers in a constructive way. So I'm going to start with Giovanna first of all, and Giovanna's first question was, why is capacity building important for early career researchers at the interface of science and policy? So, Giovanna, can you explain to us why you think that was your most important question and how you'd like to develop it? And then I'll ask for comments around the panel. Go ahead, Giovanna.
Well, thank you so much also for bringing up this question. I thought it would be relevant to address it more broadly, especially considering some of the the overreaching theme of this discussion, which is involving all the stakeholders when it comes to science for policy. And in that context, of course, early career to mid-career researchers are an important stakeholder across different disciplines. So capacity building is relevant in the context of both leveraging this expertise across disciplines for early career researchers through their involvement, but also building their capacity in the context of understanding the landscape with all the different stakeholders that are involved, so that they can most effectively contribute to science for policy. I mean, it's worth emphasizing that SAPEA is doing a wonderful job in that regard with involvement of YASAS over the past years, which is perhaps an important mechanism in this regard for more direct involvement. But at the same time, to most effectively contribute to the process, having more opportunities to build these capacities and relationships with different stakeholders then becomes a very important element for the engagement at the early stage that eventually can also contribute to bringing stronger relationships between scientists and policymakers over a longer period of time, strengthening also consequently the trust in science through this particular engagement. So these are some of the points I wanted to bring up as they might relate to these different aspects with the dimension of the early career researchers.
Yes, and we must forget, of course, that early career research workers get grey hair as well, like some of the panel members. So to start early is a great help, and to be involved in a very positive way. Do any of the panel have comments there? Yes, Morten.
Yes, no, I was just reflecting on that, and I couldn't agree more. And I think actually we have moved forward in the last 20 years on this aspect of capacity building, and we just need to do even more of that, because I think there's sometimes this prejudice that if you have a scientist that are capable of seeing the full context, and then that has been developed on the cost or the expense of actually the basic qualifications. But I actually think those are actually promoting each other. And I think it's vital that all the scientists, young researchers that we bring into society now are capable of understanding not only their basic and fundamental qualifications, but understand how they can play a role in the society. They can put words on where their qualities can actually improve the world or solve a problem. And one good example is the quantum computing. I mean, it is so fundamentally difficult to understand what is actually happening. But those who are the most successful in that part right now are actually also the ones that can put perspectives into what does it actually mean for climate calculations or for crypto technologies and whatever. So I think it's very, very important that we have researchers that are capable of linking into other areas of expertise.
I appreciate you bringing this up, if I may comment, because we are all somewhat advocating in this space for inter or cross-disciplinarity, but you're completely right to say that we're not in our conventional, traditional education system even implementing this. We value the impact, but doing these engagements through design, by design, and through these capacity building activities contributes to in this dimension as well. And I completely agree that this also reflects back onto the effectiveness of early career researchers or the impact of their research as well. So it's worth thinking about these additional incentives, perhaps, when it comes to engaging young researchers as well.
Yes, and we haven't to forget that young researchers have the enthusiasm, the energy, and the bright spark around, and that's what we really must always encourage. Are there any other comments? Yes, Babajan.
Yes, I think in early career researcher case, the multicultural experience is very important. So I would say a young needs mentor and needs mentors from different culture, even on one scientific field, but traveling and knowing different laboratories or different schools is very important. And I think I feel, especially in Hungary recently, that this is a great help. If on my own career, I know very well that I spent, for example, around 5 years in abroad when I was young.
Good. Yes, thank you, Babchan. Any other comments?
George, can
Yes.
I just, it's Rachel, sorry, I just wanted to, I won't repeat what everyone else has said. It's really important. It was really exciting to hear what Ivana was saying. I just wanted to flag, I wanted to build on something she said, actually. I think she's hit the nail on the head. It's about building reward and recognition for these processes. And I was just going to flag, we're quite lucky in the UK because the research assessment framework, which measures how well universities are doing, there are elements of that includes influence into policy. So I think that's really important to recognize that. I mentioned our Future Leaders scheme, and we do actually have civil servants on there, which is also a good way of building those bridges and for sort of understanding a bit more what policymakers want. There's certainly our new government chief scientific advisor is trying to bring more academics in on secondment into government as well to build that mutual understanding and also to sort of build a bigger network of contacts that people have. I would definitely agree with what George says. Emerging research leaders tend to have more enthusiasm and a little bit more time as well for some of the things that we want to get them involved in. And then finally, I think something we're exploring, but I've not quite made it work yet, is I don't know if other countries have this, but within our government, the different departments have networks of civil servants who are scientifically trained. They might still be doing research, or they might just be scientists that have gone in. And I think we're looking at ways in which we can reinforce the connections with those, and particularly connecting emerging research leaders with those sort of younger civil servants, I think is really important. But I've not quite got the mechanism yet. But yeah, it's vitally important going forward.
And Babchan, I'd like to reinforce your comment about mentorship as well, that it's a duty of the senior people to be mentors and help and facilitate the development in all sorts of ways, both practical and academic for the young. And then we move on in a moment, but you had a second question, Giovanna. What are the challenges that you've found in this cooperation of early career researchers with other stakeholders, say industry or senior professors and so on? What are the barriers you break down?
Some of the discussion or the interventions that we've just heard from touched upon this to an extent. There are a number of challenges. And of course, one of them is you asked at the beginning about the age, right? Many of the early career researchers are already established experts in their field, and they need to be recognized as such so that they can really contribute to the system. And I think in that context, we need to have adequate mechanisms to enable this. I highlighted YASAS as one of them, but it will be interesting to see across Europe the emergence of other mechanisms that facilitate that engagement. One of the challenges is indeed this mechanisms for direct engagement or the existence or inexistence of them, but also this capacity building opportunities so that early career researchers could be adequately prepared to contribute to different mechanisms. And finally, something that I would like to emphasize is relates to what Rachel has to an extent brought up, is the lack of incentive. I think UK might be doing more in that regard in terms of recognizing the contribution to the science policy interface through our activities that are not necessarily in a traditional academic system recognized adequately to incentivize this continuous engagement. There's always a priority to research efforts, which is of course justifiable, or education. Well, these form of services do not, and the incentive associated within the traditional academic system do not necessarily motivate early career researchers that are well equipped to contribute to actually get engaged. So this is perhaps a comment that I hope stimulates maybe the reflection on this, and maybe I would be interested to learn more about some of the different existing mechanisms like those Rachel mentioned that help overcome some of these challenges so that we can really leverage the also expertise of early career researchers.
A new connection there for you, Rachel. And there's one earlier stage, of course, than the young academies, and these are children at school. And one of our famous prime ministers, Tony Blair, is remembered for saying education, education, education. And without that and the stimulus, you would have a scientific mentor who might be a professor or a senior academic. These kids, if they have good teachers, they are being mentored in an earlier way to think, actually, science is pretty exciting and medicine is exciting, and we can put those together to help society. And that's the thing that one of the things that leads me. Now, Morten, on to you. Your talk really demonstrated the huge crossover of your principal discipline of CO2 and CO2 trapping and so on, crossing over into health, into structures, into engineering and so on. How would you like to see academics contributing to this dialogue?
I think it's almost, I'm afraid of repeating myself, but I think in the area where the academies can play an important role is actually, I think it's an inspiration to see how different the academies that we just have around the table today are so varied, and they have different focuses. And I think that's what we also need for the future academies. That is that we need to look as broad as possible. We should avoid being in the silos, and the academies should be, in my mind, an engine for promoting technological solutions, but also developing a neutral platform for communications where people can actually meet outside their normal organizational structures and discuss the challenges that we have and make sure how they can actually deliver what the society needs towards the end. So I think it's very, very important that we are not too focused on, you can argue, smaller areas of the problems, but we actually look as wide as possible, because I think that's the way we will bring the society forward. And that's also why we need the young researchers to actually be capable of doing that, because it is actually not easy to let go of your own 20% most convinced ideas and accept that there might be other views of that. So when I meet with NGOs here at ATV, they challenge me on some of my perceptions, and during dialogues for weeks, I actually move my position in terms of, for example, on all the nature-based solutions for CO2 capturing, for example. I came into the room with the view of, yes, it will work, but it will be a limited volume. But at the end of the day, I'm convinced that it can contribute much more than I thought originally. So if the academies can bring people together and forward the technologies, I think we have a bright future ahead of us.
Yes. You're really an academic in industry, let's face it.
Well, you're not the first one. I almost hear it, not on a daily basis, but I do hear it quite often.
No, but it's very important, because you bridge the gap already, but rather than being a university professor, you are in industry, and that's very Danish as well, in my experience. There's a great openness of thought that more than in some other countries. So, based on what we've been saying, Morten, do you think you would like to, say, contact the Hungarian Academy, who clearly are interested in materials, and the crossover between those materials and CO2 production, let alone capture, is important?
Certainly, I do think that we will not solve the climate crisis in Denmark nor in Hungary. So I think actually it makes a lot of sense that we work across, and the academies can also bring or spark those relations, because I think it's quite important that we understand where we can assist each other. So in Denmark, we do have one cement production facility, which is the majority of the CO2 emissions that we're looking at to reduce. And they, of course, they also need assistance. And of course, there are many ways you can do that. You can use less cement. You can put supplements like composites into cement. You can change the energy provider for the cement factory. There's so many ways we can do this, and that we actually want to talk to other people who are working on other materials in order to solve those issues. So clearly, it is a good hinge.
Yeah. So dialogue is, and the question is who initiates that, and how do you get the contacts? But and a thing we haven't talked about actually today, and I'm just going to mention it, but I don't think we can get involved, is the challenge of plastics in our environment. You know, we all know the misery this causes to wildlife. We know the misery it causes to human health as well. And this is accumulating. Fortunately, some bacteria now have been found that will chew up plastics, but at a very slow rate. So, I mean, we talked about CO2 and cement. That is probably a bigger challenge to society. But I leave it at that, having mentioned it. Mm-hmm. Now, Rachel, you posed a very interesting question, and that was, what are the important factors to consider when you work with different stakeholders? And I mean, in your position in the Academy of Medical Sciences, you're dealing with biomedical scientists, with clinicians, with hospitals, a huge variety of people. What are the sorts of things that you would think about in this diversity, and how to approach those individuals?
Thanks, George. I posed this question. In fact, the policy team back at the Academy was having a session this week on, you know, how to improve partnerships, and so I was really interested to get the other panelists' views on this. I think it's about how you build trust, I guess. I was just is a sort of question, and how, and I think it's about enabling enough time for people to get to know each other, which can be a challenge, especially when you're kind of beaming them in for one workshop and then that's the end of it. I mean, I wanted to reflect on a couple of perspectives from our point of view. So we find it very easy to engage within industry. We find it very easy to engage with large pharmaceutical companies. That's because they've got a whole team around external affairs that can come to meetings. What we find more of a struggle is when you get down to med tech and some of the smaller SMEs, which are going to be vital if you're thinking about things like AI for health, or even home health monitoring and things. And they tend to be very small companies with really not the capacity to come along to those kind of meetings. So we will engage with their industry bodies. That makes it easier. So we do engage with all the industry bodies. So I think there's an issue around time that everybody has. I was going to make a particular point around patients. So we've been learning as we've gone on about doing this. So again, it's about knowing when it's appropriate to bring patients into the room and support them, because it might be the first time, for example, they've been to a conference. Also, for us to be a bit better about plain English, for giving them time to prepare. We are lucky in the Academy. We have funding to have a whole team that supports patients to engage with us. We also make sure that there's not just one patient in the room, because one person's perspective is one person's perspective, but also there's some kind of sort of solidarity of having more of them there. We also, with academics and industry and regulators, etc., we expect them to pay to come to our events. But obviously, when you're engaging with patients, we pay expenses and look at how we can support them, for example, with carers or respite care if they're carers rather than patients. And obviously look at the other needs that they have, whether it's accessibility needs that they have. But I think what I was reflecting when I was preparing my talk is a lot of it's about trust and being prepared to come into the room, recognizing that everybody's got valid perspectives and you need to bring them all together. But yeah, I was just really interested to hear what the reflections were from the panel on that question.
I think an important word you mentioned, Rachel, which would cover everyone on this roundtable, and that is trust. We wouldn't ask for advice or help from a group or a person we didn't trust. And building up trust is absolutely crucial in my view. Patrick, engineering. You've heard a lot about engineering. Are there any comments you'd like to make or anything you'd like to add to the discussion we've been having?
Yes, thank you, George. Not so many things to add because you have gone all through very important topics. I've been working in industry and connecting to academic work for 40 years, so I'm very happy to see what you are mentioning in terms of improving this relationship, not only between industry and academics, but industry and academies, because this is also important. So I think you have raised many important topics. You mentioned Simon, you mentioned Brazil. Let's think about roads. Who will make the roads when we have no oil in the future? So there are many things about that. But I just wanted to mention one point, which to me is key, and that was mentioned to some extent, is population, talking to population. Someone in the chat mentions the young people are not hate technology. I'm not sure. They use technologies with the smartphones and so on, but it's true that they have a different way than we have. I think our main challenge is talking to the people and how through academies we can talk to the people, because industry, when we talk to people, we're always seen as pushing the benefits of industry. So academies may have a big important role in talking to people, to population. You mentioned about education. Of course, education is key, but talking to the people through the academies, I think, is something. And Rachel, I think you mentioned having the patience in the working groups, and these are having people involved in our discussions. I think it's the key, because when I talk to people, I see them really not technology adverse, because again they use the technology, but very a lot of skepticism, and this is really the main challenge. Because on the other part, what you mentioned in terms of what you have established in collaborations is really the right way. Young people, young academics. I will not repeat, but really I see very positive things in what you are establishing, and let's continue to do that.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, FIAM has a forum as well, and it was based actually on the Academy of Medical Sciences forum. And I must say, having been part of the FIAM forum, the contribution of the two patient groups who are members is absolutely immense. They're able to bring down a very complex problem to a very simple question. Well, what are you going to do about it? How is it going to work? How are you going to make it work? You are the people who understand the detail. How are you going to make it work? And all of us here are really servants of society and servants of our communities, either in making the air we breathe better, making the temperature controllable better, of helping understand what is going wrong with the roads, what is going wrong with medicine. That's a thing that I really think academies have to have at the center. They are using their expertise for the benefit of man, woman, and childkind in society. And if you start off with something as broad as that, you can't go wrong, in my view. But I'm getting old, and that's easy to preach.
You're not the only one.
but that is very important. We are all serving our communities in one way or another, and we're doing it for the benefit of man and womankind. So when I've had many PhD students, and always the first thing that I have explained to them is, what is the question you are asking? The one question. And when you've solved that, you will have other questions that come along. But if you can't define your question, you will be in a mess. And you will get into a mess of answers and you can't advance. So we should really be able to look at the question that we're addressing. And really going back to this point of regulators. From FIRM, I was on the board of SAPIR, and to get through the bureaucracy of being able to produce an evidence review report on cancer screening, I had sleepless nights. And actually, it was very simple when you come down to the fundamental question. The question is, what is the best way to do cancer screening in Europe and for European citizens? And then you can elaborate on that. This took, in the end, 2.5 years to get through to an evidence review report, which was then reviewed by the EU and is now EU policy. And so the other aspect we have in our professional lives is the speed and the urgency of some of the things that we do. Some things are very urgent. Some things we can consider and take time to approach. But speed is often of the essence. I'm not going to preach, I promise you. But we have to have that. And we have to have this idea of the regulators and their knowledge of the subject that they're regulating. And I find this very difficult personally. If the government came to me and said, George, you're reasonably bright, would you run the economics for us? I'd say, me? Economics? I can hardly run my bank account, and it, so you have to appreciate that the people that we are trying to help are starting often from zero knowledge, and you need to build. But the collaboration between all of our groups, engineering, medicine, the air we breathe, the materials, how to encourage the young, is of crucial importance for the future of our societies. And I've been very encouraged listening to everybody today, just thinking about that. And congratulations and thank you to all of you, and thanks to Eurocase for helping alongside of FIRM to produce this meeting. Now, does anybody have any final comments they would like to make, or any summaries they would like to bring up? You've all given really good talks. Anything? Happy birthday! Oh,
a big thank you to you, George, for animation of the roundtable. Just great.
Thank you.
And to all the speakers, of course, and attendees, and preparatory people.
Now, one last thing, just for the people who are listening and not on the panel. The first thing to say is this has all been recorded, and you can get to the record of that on the website of FIRM or Eurocase or of the SAM unit. And if you just put any of those names into Google or Wikipedia, it will bring them up. Thank you to all of the panel. Of course, your talks have been very, very illuminating, and actually, they've all been saying the same thing, which is collaboration and a realization that we are doing this for our communities and society. So with that, let's all return back to our day jobs, and thank you all very much for very stimulating talks and for being part of this, and to the participants who have bravely kept going for the hour and a half that we've had this. Thank you very much, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. So goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.